Welcome to the Academic Task Force for the Committee for 125, Chapter 2 at East Tennessee State University. I'm so glad that you're part of this group. I wanted to do a little bit of a flipped classroom kind of situation here and provide you with this video orientation or contextual grounding so that you can better prepare for our initial meeting. We're only going to have about 5 meetings, as you know, from the schedule, and so we really need to make each of them count. So let me introduce myself. I'm Sharon James McGee, and I am the committee chair. I'm Dean of the College of Graduate and Continuing Studies. I'm a professor of English in the Department of Language and Literature. I am a native of Johnson City who did my master's at ETSU and graduated from University School also. Left and went away for a long time and have just been back at ETSU for 3 years. My co-chair on this task force is Jody Palaha Jones. She's our staff lead. She's in the Quillen College of Medicine and is a presidential fellow. Jody is going to really do a lot of hard work in terms of note-taking, and so as we move forward, she may ask you to clarify statements just so that she can really capture the detail and nuance of what we're trying to talk about in this task force. At our first meeting, we'll introduce all of you to one another as well, but it's nice to kind of have an idea of who we are, I think. So there are 6 task forces that will be at work over the next 2 months, each with a different focus and some different parameters. We're the Academic Task Force. There will be one on research and scholarship that's going to be chaired by Dr. Joe Bidwell, one on ETSU Health that will be chaired by Dr. David Linville, an Equity and Inclusion Task Force that will be chaired by Dr. Jana Scarborough, and the Student Success and Experience Committee will be chaired by Dr. Chris Keller, and a Fiscal Sustainability Task Force that will be chaired by Dr. David Atkins. Now, across these 6 task forces, we realize that there will be some overlap. For example, one of the things that may come up in our task force is this idea of tuition and access and affordability. And is that going to be something that we need to talk about in our task force, or is that really a fiscal sustainability issue? So the 6 chairs and co-chairs have decided that we're going to try to meet together regularly to talk about some of those ideas that overlap and intertwine between the task forces and decide who's going to take the lead on those, and discussions that we're having in these other task forces that may help inform and craft a good argument for why those concepts need to be included in the final reports. As we get started, I wanted to talk about some group expectations. Dr. Palaha and I have had a couple of meetings to talk about how we want our group to function. So first of all, know that we value creativity. This is going to be really important. Bring your thinking caps with you and think in new ways about the ideas of, in our case, the academic enterprise at ETSU. It's going to be really important, and that's so exciting to be able to think in new ways about those questions. We want to be sure that we value all the voices and perspectives that are a part of our virtual table, if you will. Who are sitting here on Zoom with us. We have students, both undergraduate and graduate students. We have faculty, we have department chairs, we have community partners. And so it's going to be really important to listen and value what's being said by others. At the same time, we need to keep our focus. We have 5 meetings. We have a deliverable that is due soon. And so when Dr. Palaha and I see us getting off track or wandering down a path that we don't need to go right now, we will bring us back. And that's going to be really important. And we want to value each other's time while we're here. And so keeping that focus is going to be important. And also, related to that, when we have really good ideas that are coming out that may not fit in the conversation at the moment, we're going to create a parking lot for those ideas and either share them with another task force if that's appropriate, or circle back to them as we move through the work that we have to do. So what is our purpose or charge as we've been given by the president? So first, we are to consider and recommend new and innovative ways of fulfilling our academic mission. That's really exciting, full of possibility. And we've also been asked to explore emerging issues impacting the future of the higher education landscape, embracing any ideas or opportunities regarding course delivery, short-term academic experiences, the academic calendar, and consider linkages to workforce training and development. What are our deliverables? So we have a report that's due in which we need to provide aspirational recommendations. In other words, we don't have to worry if the things that we are suggesting are measurable. That's not our job, how to measure it. Our job is to set forth the aspirational recommendations. And as we do that, we're going to want to frame those or group them in categories of short-term or immediate goals, some mid-range, 5-year-ish sorts of recommendations, and then 10-year recommendations. In addition, we're going to need to craft a strategic academic vision statement for the Committee on 125. And so the task force work, just so you understand, is going to feed into that larger Committee on 125, and they're going to pick the initiatives that they want to move forward with. And so we need to craft a good academic vision statement, and we'll work on that together. And we have to do all of this by the end of June. So we've got, as the old song goes, we've got a long way to go and a short time to get there. Dr. Plaha and I have met a few times, and we have taken all of this information and created some buckets of ideas or buckets of topics that we think might be important for us to think about as we start to move forward in this endeavor. So obviously we want to keep in mind the traditional students who come to ETSU. Regardless of how higher education changes, there will still always be traditional students. We're talking about students who graduate high school, matriculate into college, complete their undergraduate degree in 4 to 6 years, who may at some point come back to graduate education, but may not. And so those students will always be part of who we are. But we also need to think about other groups. So transfer students, those folks who may start at a community college and then transfer into the university. Non-traditional or re-entry students. So these may be folks who have started and stopped at various points. We need to be thinking about workforce development. Also, new and alternative credentialing pathways. Graduate and professional education. And the K through 20 pipeline, or we could say even the pre-K through 20 pipeline. Talking with how do we engage students earlier in their academic journey, high school or middle school, and get them excited, involved, and interested in the idea of higher education. 21st century needs and expectations of both students, of the workforce, the changing landscape. Also, at the center of all of these questions, we need to be thinking about access and inclusion. So to help frame our thinking about those bucket topics, I wanted to share a few slides with you that were shared with the task force chairs the other day. And these come from Mike Kraus. Mr. Kraus is formerly chair of THEC, which is the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, and is now a senior advisor at Bradley Arndt Bolton Cummings Consultants. And so Mr. Kraus talked about 3 challenges that he sees in the state universities in Tennessee. And the first is that the higher education marketplace is crowded. You can see on this map ETSU located prominently, and within 150 to 200 mile radius of our campus, all of the bold blue dots indicate a competitor school. We've got Eastern Kentucky University right up there in Richmond, Kentucky. We've got Radford University over in Roanoke. We've got, of course, UT Knoxville. We've got several schools in Charlotte, Spartanburg, Greenville, all surrounding us. And so these are, competing for the same students that we have. But all of those institutions are now looking at a smaller pool of students because you may have heard about what's being called the demographic cliff. And so just according to birth rates, we are entering a period where there are fewer traditionally aged college students just existing. So the birth rate has declined, and now, we're at the point where they are now starting to be of college age. And so all of those folks are still competing for a decreasing number of 18 to 21-year-old students. A second challenge we face is that online education has become more than just a complement to what we do at brick and mortar institutions, but it is becoming part of the primary way of delivering education. COVID and the recent pandemic has only exacerbated that. So institutions that weren't even really in the marketplace in online education are now thinking about it in new ways. And so online education is also, when it started, was really sort of done by for-profits, and it was very complicated and sort of looked down upon, but now it's not. And so that is a challenge that we have before us. And then the third challenge is that higher education is increasingly not viewed as a singular early adulthood experience. I would argue that it has probably never been sort of that singular experience, that monolithic, movie kind of experience of the student who, is 18 years old and leaves home and goes to college. I mean, those folks have always existed, but there have been a whole lot of other people who have had different journeys, and those have not necessarily been examined or embraced by institutions of higher education. And so as we start to think about what that lifelong learner might look like, these are people who are going to take a variety of pathways into and out of higher education. So they may start at a community college, complete an associate's degree, and transfer into a 4-year institution. They may complete an associate's degree, go into the workplace, and decide, gosh, 5 years later, I need more education, and they want to come back at that point. We may see folks who stop, and start throughout their undergraduate experience. We may see students, or we will be seeing students who are not interested in a 4-year degree, but who are instead interested in packaging or packages of courses that help them do what they want to do in the workplace. So a package of cyber security coupled with a package for data analytics. And they're not interested in that 4-year degree. How do we serve them? What do we do? And how do we do all of this and maintain academic integrity? Dr. Noland, in our conversation the other day, identified 4 pillars that he thinks are going to be very important to inform the work that the task forces are doing. And those 4 pillars include regionalism, and that is, how is ETSU fitting into the region and how are we promoting this region of the Appalachian Highlands? And that ties into the idea of stewardship of place. As you know, we're located in a beautiful part of the world. And what is our role as an institution in being a steward of this wonderful place? We also need to think about the student pipeline. And what is that pipeline? Who are the students? How do we engage with our elementary, middle, high school partners, community college, and other places in the pipeline? And then also, how is ETSU being a business and industry partner as well? What is our connection? How do we both create employment pools to drive business and industry and economic development? Are we meeting the needs of those industries? And are we being forward thinking about what kinds of business and industries we can attract to this area, because we are looking to the future and thinking about preparing students who can do the jobs of tomorrow and not just the jobs of today. So as we start our work, I always tell particularly my graduate students, when we're starting any research endeavor, we need to think of some guiding questions, and these need to inform our work. So I want to share with you the guiding questions that will help our task force. What if? Perhaps you've noticed on some of the slides I've had this little phrase going throughout. What if? And that's going to be an important question for us. What if? So I talked about creativity before. And so let's embrace this idea of looking for possibility. What if we imagined a future for ETSU related to academics that is not just a revision of the current reality, but attempts to alter reality and create something new? This is exciting work. I am very excited about the conversations that we can have and the ideas that we can generate to really provide an inclusive, accessible, forward-thinking education for our region. It's full of possibility. Along those lines, what are the key objectives that will be best to ensure that we fulfill our mission? What will be our immediate / short-term objectives, mid-range, and then longer-term 10-year objectives? A strategic plan really only has a lifespan of about 10 years, and so that's what we're looking at. What are our key audiences, and how are their needs and aspirations changing? So who are those students and how are they changing? How are we meeting, or how will we meet those needs? How is the higher education landscape evolving, and what does that mean for our competitive advantage? I shared with you a little bit about how the higher education landscape is changing, and so we really need to embrace that idea and possibility. And then we need to think about our competitors, both traditional and non-traditional, and in what ways are they competing differently? How might we respond? So you may recall the map of the competitors within a 150 to 200 mile radius. What's not included on that map are institutions like Southern New Hampshire University, Western Governors University, Liberty University, that have, even the University of Memphis, that have Purdue University, growing significant online delivery presence. And they are capturing a great number of students because of flexibility, because of affordability, because of that online program delivery that they have. So those are also our competitors. But one of the things that we need to do is think about our peer group so that we can help identify benchmarks for the Committee on 125 as to who are our academic competitors. Along the same lines, what do we do or not consider doing? As you know, there are limits in both time and resources and focus. So what do we do or not consider doing as an institution? What are the boundaries of our efforts? What criteria are going to be used to demarcate what's inside and outside of those boundaries? All of these questions are going to help us think through what can ETSU be in terms of our academic programming in the next decade. So I look forward to having these conversations with you over the next few weeks, and I look forward to our first meeting. Thanks so much. See you soon.